Okay, so, you know, we got our hands on something pretty fascinating that I thought would, resonate with our listeners.
Hmm.
It's a proposal that really dives into the future of, well, U.S. technology strategy. Specifically, it zeroes in on artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting about this is it's not just some, think tank white paper or something like that. This is a direct submission from the AI platform Hugging Face, and they submitted this to the Office of Science and Technology Policy, the OSTP.
Right, right. And, it's important to emphasize that Hugging Face isn't just any company out there. I mean, they're a major player, a hub in the AI world. They're supporting over 1.5 million public AI models, and they have a global community of around 7 million users.
Wow.
Yeah, so when a company of that scale actually puts forward a concrete proposal and weighs in on like the future direction of AI, it carries a lot of weight.
It does.
It signals a significant perspective on where things should be headed.
Totally. And their core argument, which we're going to unpack today, is, it's pretty bold. They believe that open source AI should be the cornerstone, like the very foundation of the United States AI strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission, this deep dive, is to understand, why is a leading AI company like this advocating for open source?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the ripple effects for, everything?
Yeah.
Innovation, the economy, national security.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are some really eye-opening projections that they make in this proposal. For example, they talk about the potential economic multiplier effect of open technical systems, and they suggest that it could be as high as 2000x.
Wow.
Yeah, and, what's really striking here is not just the size of that number, but the thinking behind it,
Yeah.
the underlying belief in, like, the power of compounding innovation. When you have this environment where many minds can freely build and iterate on a shared foundation,
Yeah.
the rate of progress, the breadth of applications, it can explode in ways that a closed system simply can't match.
Right.
You think about like the early internet. It was built on open protocols, and it led to this just explosion of services and economic activity that nobody could have predicted.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so open source as the bedrock.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with how they structure their argument. They propose a three-pillar strategy.
Yes.
So what are the essential components of this framework?
All right. So the first pillar focuses on building robust open source ecosystems.
Yeah.
And the basic idea here is that innovation in a field as dynamic and as complex as AI, it doesn't typically happen in isolation.
Right.
Breakthroughs often emerge from this diverse array of contributors, spanning different organizations, different research areas, and different disciplines even.
So it's a collaborative approach, leveraging that collective intelligence of the entire AI community.
Exactly. And Hugging Face really emphasizes the critical role of infrastructure support in amplifying those contributions. They specifically highlight the National AI Research Resource, NARAR, as like a prime example of an initiative that can provide that necessary computing power, the resources, to fuel this type of collaborative innovation.
Excellent.
You can think of it as like, establishing a well-equipped central platform that numerous researchers, developers can all access, contribute to, and really foster that shared environment for progress.
So a common ground for innovation, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the second pillar of their strategy? What does that focus on?
So the second pillar really centers on democratizing AI adoption.
Okay.
And the main goal here is to make AI more accessible, more usable across the whole spectrum of the economy. It's not just about, the major tech giants having cutting-edge AI capabilities. It's about empowering businesses of all sizes across all sectors to effectively use AI in their operations.
And how do they envision achieving that broad democratization?
Well, they really emphasize the need for more efficient and modular AI systems. The concept is to break down like these really complex, often massive AI models into more manageable and more adaptable components. And this modularity would allow for, easier integration into different applications and workflows.
Yeah.
It effectively lowers the barrier to entry for businesses, even ones without like massive in-house AI expertise, and it allows them to participate and benefit from this technology.
So instead of these huge, all-encompassing AI models, we're talking about more flexible, adaptable building blocks that companies can kind of tailor.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, and the third pillar, that gets into security, right?
Exactly.
Establishing strong security standards.
Yeah, I mean, in any digital ecosystem, trust and security, they're non-negotiable.
Of course.
You have to have that.
So how does an open source model contribute to a more secure AI landscape?
Well, Hugging Face, they draw on the pretty extensive history and the established best practices of the open source software community.
Hmm.
And they argue that open development, by its nature, it just fosters greater transparency
Right.
because that underlying code is publicly accessible. It's subject to much broader scrutiny, which makes it easier to find and address potential vulnerabilities. They specifically emphasize, traceability, clear disclosure protocols, and strong interoperability standards as key elements in building a more resilient and trustworthy AI ecosystem.
So more eyes on the code basically leads to a more secure and reliable system.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. We've covered their three-pillar strategy. Now let's get into the economics of it. You mentioned this potentially transformative multiplier effect.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So the number they cite is really quite remarkable. They suggest, Hugging Face does, that strategic investment in open technical systems can lead to a multiplier effect as high as 2000x.
2008.
Yeah. And to kind of illustrate the potential impact of this,
Mm-hmm.
they propose that a $4 billion investment in OpenAI could potentially generate $8 trillion in value.
That is a huge number.
It is. It is. And the core idea, right, is that open systems, they catalyze widespread innovation. They empower all these different entities to build upon and iteratively improve this foundational technology. And that creates this cascading effect, which drives development of new products, services, and efficiencies across the economy.
So it's about unlocking that collective ingenuity
Yeah.
and avoiding those limitations and potential bottlenecks of closed systems.
Exactly.
And they brought up some international examples too, right, to back up this economic argument.
Yes, they did. They highlighted studies that suggest, on average, a country could lose something like 2.2% of its GDP without the contribution of open source software.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. And then they pointed to the impact of open source technologies in Europe. They estimated that it generated between 65 and 95 billion in GDP in 2018 alone. That's just 1 year.
Yeah.
So there's real-world evidence of the economic significance of open source.
Right. There's precedent for it. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the technology itself. Are there recent advancements in AI that support this open source vision?
Absolutely. So Hugging Face points to some breakthroughs like Almo 2 and Olympic Coder as examples of how open research is producing AI systems that can match, and in some cases even exceed, the performance of proprietary models.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about raw power. These open models are also showing advantages in efficiency and in specialized capabilities.
It's interesting because the common perception might be that the most cutting-edge AI is happening behind closed doors in these private research labs.
Yeah, and that perception is increasingly being challenged by what we're seeing in the open source AI community.
Yeah.
What's particularly remarkable is the pace of progress. Hugging Face talks about how development timelines are compressing dramatically. Tasks that 2 years ago required models with over 100 billion parameters can now be done with models that have as few as 2 billion parameters.
Wow, so things are moving really fast.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It really underscores how dynamic the field of AI is. Okay, so beyond the technological feasibility, what are the practical reasons driving businesses to adopt open source AI?
Well, there are several key drivers. Firstly, cost efficiency.
Yeah.
By using open foundations, companies can significantly reduce their research and development costs. Secondly, open source AI offers really powerful customization capabilities. Companies can tailor models to their specific needs rather than being limited by off-the-shelf proprietary solutions.
Right, because every business has its own unique challenges and requirements.
Exactly. And another advantage is the reduced dependence on single vendors. With open models, you avoid being locked into one provider's ecosystem, which gives you more flexibility and control over your AI infrastructure. And perhaps most importantly, as we saw with those examples, open models are proving to be highly competitive in terms of performance. They often match or even outperform closed systems.
So it's not just about saving money, it's about getting access to top-tier AI tools that you can really adapt to your needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Hugging Face specifically highlights startups and mid-sized companies as those who stand to benefit the most, right?
They do, and that makes sense because those are often the companies that have more limited resources.
Right.
So they can gain a real edge by leveraging the flexibility and affordability of open source AI.
Okay, so given all of this, what policy recommendations does Hugging Face propose to the U.S. government to strengthen this vision of open source AI leadership?
They have a range of really concrete suggestions. So first, they strongly advocate for the full implementation and expansion of the NRR pilot program.
Okay.
They recognize that it's a key piece of shared infrastructure. They also recommend dedicating public computing resources specifically to support open source AI research and development.
So a clear call for government investment.
Yes. Another crucial area is data. They emphasize the need to create sustainable data ecosystems and address the concerning decline in the data commons. This is that vast pool of publicly available data that has been essential for training AI models. As more and more data becomes proprietary, it's like we're losing that vital fuel for innovation. They recommend investing in creating and maintaining high-quality datasets and establishing clear ethical guidelines for data usage.
That makes sense. The quality and accessibility of data is crucial for training effective AI.
Absolutely. They also suggest supporting programs that empower diverse sectors of the economy to develop customized AI, recognizing that AI will impact every industry, not just tech. And they recommend expanding the role of NIST in bringing together AI experts to develop best practices. And finally, they emphasize the importance of ensuring high-quality data for evaluating AI performance and reliability.
Okay, so those are some pretty comprehensive recommendations.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about some of the challenges and concerns around AI, specifically energy consumption and barriers to adoption.
Yeah, these are really important issues.
Definitely. So let's start with energy consumption.
Mhm.
Hugging Face acknowledges this as a major concern, right?
They do, and they point to the International Energy Agency's projection that electricity demand from data centers could double by 2026.
Oh, well, wow.
Yeah, reaching a level equal to Japan's current electricity consumption.
That's a lot of energy.
It is. And while we often hear about the energy demands of training AI models,
Right.
what Hugging Face points out is that inference, which is the actual running of those models,
Yeah.
might ultimately consume even more energy simply because of scale. So we need to develop much more energy-efficient AI.
And what about the challenges faced by smaller companies and startups in adopting AI?
Well, as we mentioned before, those smaller organizations often face significant barriers because of the costs involved. Hugging Face references IDC's projection that global spending on AI will reach $632 billion by 2028.
So there's a risk that the benefits of AI could be concentrated among the larger companies.
Exactly, and that's where open source AI can play a leveling role. It can provide more affordable and accessible solutions.
Right.
And there's some interesting data on this too. Companies using open source AI tools report positive ROI at a significantly higher rate, 51% compared to 41% for those not using open source.
So there's a measurable economic advantage.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, Hugging Face is making a compelling case for open source AI as a core part of the U.S. technology strategy. They believe it's essential for innovation, economic growth, and a more secure and equitable AI ecosystem.
That's right. They argue that this approach aligns with American values of openness, competition, and opportunity. They believe it's crucial for the U.S. to maintain its technological leadership.
That's a really interesting vision for the future of AI in the U.S.
Yeah.
But what do you see as the biggest hurdles to actually implementing this kind of open source strategy at a national level? And what role could individuals and smaller organizations play in this? It really makes you think about balancing open collaboration with national competitiveness.
That's a really great question, and it's a complex one. I think some of the biggest hurdles will involve coordinating efforts across different stakeholders, like government agencies, research institutions, and the private sector. Making sure everyone is working together effectively, that resources are allocated efficiently, and that we have clear standards. We also need to address the challenges of energy consumption and ensure that smaller players have access to the computing power and data they need. As for individuals and smaller organizations, they'll likely be the key drivers of innovation in an open source ecosystem. They'll bring new ideas, specialized applications, and fresh approaches.
It's fascinating to think about.
It is. The challenge will be to create an environment that encourages both collaboration and healthy competition. That's what will ultimately strengthen the U.S.'s position in the world of AI.
Well, this has been a really insightful conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think are the biggest challenges and opportunities in implementing a truly open source AI strategy? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
And be sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more in-depth discussions like this. Until next time.
See you then.